Hi, I'm Kirsten, the Ectopic Pregnancy Support Podcast host. Thank you for listening, and I hope these stories and conversations bring you comfort and help you feel less alone. Enjoy this episode. Hi, Isabella. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
So your story is a little bit unique, and I figured let's just get right into it. Tell me about your story.
Yes, my story is different, but I can't say that it's unique, but because I'm so certain that other people have experienced a very isolated ectopic story and scenario. So I want to kind of shed some light on an unconventional side of what pregnancy and can look like for some women, and it doesn't always include a partner. I met this person, he was in the military, so it was very just temporary, like he was just here. And I had the Nexplanon in my arm, and I thought I was good to go. However, I think it was like a month or two until it expired. So it was like on its last legs, I suppose. And I learned that I was pregnant very quickly because I could just tell something was very wrong. And I was very sensitive to pregnancy. I just knew, I was like, oh no, I've never been pregnant before, but this is it. Like it's very distinct feeling. For me, some people can go months and they're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. That would not be me. I know immediately now that I would be able to tell. And it was tough because I just didn't have that emotional support from a partner. If you were in marriage, which is, a blessing that you get to have when you're in a committed relationship. And he believed me, because that was a concern that I had. I'm like, oh my gosh, is he going to believe me? Because we, weren't that close. We were pen pals for a long time. And then he was based down in Las Vegas, and I'm from Las Vegas. So I visited him, and then that's how that all occurred. And then I went back to my home, and he went back to his home. And then I shared a message, and I sent him a picture of the test, and he was just like, oh my gosh, what would you like to do? And he's like, I don't think we're in a position to co-parent because I am on the other side of the nation right now. And I can't be there for you. And I said, no worries. Like, I think I know what to do. And I went to work and thought about it. And I was just like, should I just do this? Should I not do this? And so we decided to, not have the child, just because I was working at a nonprofit, and I just was not making enough money to like even support myself. Barely. I had roommates. I was 23 years old. So, and I was like ashamed, because people are going to ask if I were to have a child and not be in a relationship in my family. Like, these are all things flooding through my mind. And he was willing to pay. And I get there, and I was just out of body experience. I'm like, what am I doing? I don't want to do this. This is not something I identify with. I don't want this as an identity layer within myself. So I decided not to. But I still went to go get an ultrasound there. And they were a little confused because nothing was in the uterus. And they're like, well, maybe you're just too early and it's just too small. So I would come back, and that was out of pocket. And I was experiencing like some spotting, and I was trying to get my OB, and I was calling them, and they were not picking up. And finally I just drove to their office. I'm like, what the actual F? Why aren't you answering? Like, this is healthcare. You cannot. They're like, oh, we're changing our CRM, so we can't take any appointments. And I said, that's cool. You need to answer your phone and tell me that, because now I'm here after a week of calling you, and I need to know what's going on. So then they were like, well, you have to go to your primary and get a referral, and then you can go to an OB. And at that point I was like spotting more and more, and I'm like, something isn't right. So finally I just went to Planned Parenthood to finally talk to a doctor. And they ran some tests. They're like, yes, you are pregnant, but we also don't see it in your uterus. So we are going to diagnose you right now for an ectopic. We may be wrong, but we believe that that's what this is. And the earlier you get diagnosed, the better. So if you feel any pain whatsoever, please go to the ER. So I was going to work through all of this, and I would be crying myself crazy in the closet at work. And finally, like, one of my coworkers, she came to me and she's like, what is going on? Like, did someone die? Why are you hiding in here? And I told her everything. And she's like, you need to go talk to the CEO, because we had a boy or a male HR, and I wasn't comfortable with talking with him. She goes, just go straight to the CEO, and the CEO is a woman. And I'm close with the CEO. I went to her and I told her, and she goes, go home. We will pay for you for the rest of the month, and we'll pay you sabbatical. I was on a grant. I was a nonprofit. So I had 2 months left of my grant until I did not have work or unemployed there. So she goes, we'll pay you for the rest of the month, and you'll get sabbatical for your last month. So just handle this and let me know if you need anything. So I'm very blessed for that. So for 2 months, I did not have to go to work. Not everyone gets this privilege in the United States. You have to tough it out a lot of times. I often thought and got very emotional with the thought of like, what are the women doing who don't have that? They're just an emotional wreck and having to go to work every day. It was torture. So then I started feeling pain, and I went to the ER. I was spotting, and they were like, we believe you're having a miscarriage. They never told me an ectopic. I was waiting to see. I was actually testing them to see if they would properly even mention that word. And they were like, we think you're having a miscarriage, just go home and get some rest. And I was like thinking, it was $500 for me to go to the ER just to walk through the doors. And I'm like, I just paid $500 for you to tell me to go rest.
Yeah. So Planned Parenthood told you this is likely an ectopic. And then the ER you went to said miscarriage. Did anyone ever ask you to do blood work? Okay. Interesting. You left off you were testing the emergency room. And
the male nurse looked at me in the face and said, well, at least it's not ectopic.
What?
Can you imagine how confusing that is for people? Like, for me, I was just like, what? Why would you say that? Like, that if it's better?
That is not the right bedside manner.
Yeah, I was just very shocked that he said that. And I was just like,
did you mention that someone else had mentioned it was possibly an ectopic?
I was embarrassed because the ER is church oriented.
Okay.
And so I just didn't want to feel more judged than I already were, because they were asking me questions like, is your husband coming? And I was just feeling a lot of judgment.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to say that I went to Planned Parenthood, because I didn't want them thinking that I was trying to get an abortion.
Right.
And like I said, where I live is small. So it's a small town.
Everyone knows everyone.
Yeah. So I just didn't want to say that I went to Planned Parenthood because of the stigma that it has. But honestly, it saved my life.
Yeah.
Because they gave me the first proper diagnosis.
Now, and I know you started sharing your story, and we didn't really get into what year this was and whatnot. What year was it? 20?
It was right when Roe v. Wade was being overturned. So I was shitting bricks.
Yeah.
I was freaking out.
And during this time, were you still in contact with the guy? Okay.
Yes. He was, adamant on texting me every day, making sure that I was okay and that I had proper funds. So he would send me money for some of the doctor visits and ER visits. And was a lot of stress taken off my shoulders, because I often thought of women who don't have that in their life. If they just have to foot the bill every single time, every single appointment. So he was good for that, to kind of take that off my shoulders.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, we don't talk about the financial side of things enough. I've asked women on Instagram before, how much money did your ectopic cost? And there are some women that had to pay 60 grand out of pocket.
Yeah, I paid about just over 10.
Yeah. And for something that isn't preventable, and you're expected to pay out of pocket if you don't have great health insurance, or you have health insurance, but you still have to pay a large amount.
Yep.
It's wild.
Yep. I went to the ER, I think 5 times in 1 month, which is $500 each time. And it took them the third time to refer me to an OB.
Oh my gosh. So okay. So you just spoke about your first ER visit, and you continued to go and to the same one.
Because I knew that it was covered by my insurance.
Okay.
And Planned Parenthood told me to go to the ER whenever I felt pain. And what's really tough about that piece of information is during an ectopic, you feel pain a lot. You have something growing. It was in my left fallopian tube.
Yeah.
It for sure. And no wonder it ruptures and you die, because it is very, very tiny and you have this giant thing weighing on you. And yeah.
So each time you went to the ER, you said 5 times or so. Did they ever mention ectopic, or they just kept saying you're miscarrying? Every time. Wow.
And so I finally was just I told them, because the ER was really close to my house, so I could just go there. And I was scared. I was alone in my house in pain, and I would go there. And then finally I told them, I was told that I had an ectopic. I need to go see a doctor. I don't know how to treat this. I don't know what the next steps are.
So you got referred to an OB.
Yes, and that OB was my mom's, who helped give birth to me.
Oh my gosh. What are the odds?
That's how small this place is. It's a small
That makes sense.
So he's like, your last drops my last name. And I'm like, yes. He goes, oh, your mom is XYZ. And I said, He goes, yeah, I was there on your birthday. I helped her give birth to you. And he's like, it's time for me to retire.
Yeah, maybe.
So that was weird. And I'm like, oh, great. Because I don't know if my mom knew at the time. I didn't tell my mom. Oh, I did tell my mom. And I told her I was that it was ectopic after I got referred, and that it was kind of getting real. I was just a hermit in my house.
Can I ask a question before we get into your visit with the OB? So during this time, who did you tell that you were pregnant, let alone an ectopic? And I ask that because if I got pregnant without a serious relationship, I would have held that secret so close to my heart. I would be so nervous to tell anyone, and then let alone it to be a life-threatening pregnancy, potentially, I wouldn't know what to do. So I'm curious what you did.
I didn't tell many people. I think Guy knew, my coworker, the CEO,
Mm-hmm.
because I had to get those. And then I finally told my mom. My dad did not know. I think that's it.
I know how hard it is to cope through all the emotions. And I mean, I had a really great support system. I just can't imagine not telling or not being able to tell
Mm-hmm.
people or feeling nervous and scared and all of those added emotions.
Yeah, it is really tough.
Do you feel like you got good support from those that you told?
All of them were pen pals. My mom doesn't live here, so I
Okay.
went through all of my appointments alone.
I know it's been years and I'm sure it's still traumatic to think about, but you know, my heart goes out to you thinking about it.
Yeah, it makes me sad because I was so young too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Little me running around.
I know. And you said you were 23, right? At the
Mhm.
time?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at 23, you're still just out there living your life and having fun, or you should be having fun. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm sad that you had to go through this at that age in that circumstance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's hard realizations to it too. There's things that I said to myself where I said I'm probably not the first to endure something like this, and there's always someone who has experienced worse than me, and I'm not that unique. And it's a hard pill to swallow. There's some hard pills to swallow with everything, and I put myself in the situation. So I am not a victim. I take full responsibility of what I did to myself to put myself in this situation. And I've learned from that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think where I give myself grace is that, there's human error in everything. And I'm not the first person to do this to themselves. I'm not the first person to go try to get an abortion. I'm not the first person to have an ectopic, and I will definitely not be the last. And I won't be the last woman to not to have to go through this without a partner.
Mm-hmm.
The best thing that people can do that have not gone through this is just have the understanding that this is not a perfect world. As much as we want to close our ears and watch Disney movies and think that there's a fairy tale, there's violence and dangers in the world, and people make mistakes every day, all day.
Yeah, I think that's why it makes me really happy to see more women coming out with their stories,
Mm-hmm.
because it does showcase that all of our lives aren't perfect. We've all gone through things,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're said or not. But the fact that it's getting a little bit more normalized to talk about the hardships in life,
Mm-hmm.
that makes me really happy, because that is the world we live in.
Mm-hmm.
We're all imperfect.
Yep. I'm very glad that social media has been so prevalent, because I couldn't imagine doing this without it. And I don't say this lightly when I say when I found your page, it was, like I said, I didn't have anyone.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand that what I was going through was being spoken about. And so there were a couple things on TikTok. It was just more of like women talking about it, but yours was a whole platform.
Mm-hmm.
And was conversational and engaging, rather than just kind of finding someone that was just talking about it themselves. Yours was kind of a hub for sure.
Thank you. It's so weird to say I'm glad that you found my page helpful, because in that same sentence, I wish you never had to find my Instagram account.
Yeah.
Because when I was going through mine, I couldn't find anything.
Mm-hmm.
online. Like you said, maybe here and there, people would share their story in a post, and then that's it.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing that was consistent
Mm-hmm.
with advocacy and awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with podcasting. I felt like I would listen to random ectopic stories on health and wellness podcasts and whatnot. And there are literally no podcasts out there dedicated to ectopics. And I thought, how is there not? It's 2025.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, I'm just going to do it and see how it goes. And I'm so thankful that you're here and open to talking about it, even though it's one, really hard for all of us to talk about, but two, really hard to talk about it from your circumstance.
Yeah, it's not something I expected for sure.
So going back to the OB,
Uh-huh.
After you saw them and they said that they were there on your birthday when your mom was in the hospital, what happened next?
They did blood work, and I did that for 3 weeks, and they confirmed that it was ectopic, and they said that it's time to do treatment. I don't remember how, gosh, it's just, my memory makes me feel like this time felt like a year of, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a year pregnancy, and it was probably like 7 weeks or something.
It's true. It feels like forever.
It was the most traumatic. Like, I remember writing about it, and I said 3 months.
Okay.
I don't remember how far along I was, because I couldn't have been more than like 8 weeks. There's no way. But it all happened so quickly, because 8 weeks now is nothing, especially when you're planning a wedding. Just like, oh my gosh, we have no time.
I know. Yeah.
But it felt like a whole year of 3 months. It felt just painful.
Yeah.
And like watching the clock tick. Because at the time, like, I wasn't working, so I was just home, like, legitimately watching time go by. And like, I walked a lot. So I did it. Same thing with how kind of you felt of just a number. He was like, well, we got to do surgery tomorrow. And I was like, surgery for what? And he's like, well, we got to take out your tube. And I had to ask, is there another option?
Wow. Well, yeah, I'm surprised that you jumped right to surgery.
He's like, yeah, I think I can do it tomorrow morning. And I was like, whoa, like, you're going to just remove my tube tomorrow. You're telling me in a 15-minute appointment that you're just going to remove an essential organ to how I would have children.
It's a lot to think about and a lot of questions that pop up when something as serious as that is recommended.
Yeah, so I definitely asked. I said, well, is there another option? He goes, yeah, there's the methotrexate, but it has a really low success level for how far along you are. And I couldn't help him. Like, if I just got diagnosed like 4 weeks ago for Planned Parenthood, I would have just been treated, and I could have just had the methotrexate. But I was like, honestly, I had this ectopic. I've had a number of things happen to me. My luck is on my side. Or not again. I'm like, I'll just do the shot. I'm like, with my odds, hopefully my luck will be in my favor after everything that I've been through. So, so we did that, and we watched it, and it was going down, and it worked.
What were your numbers at when you had the shot?
Yeah, I wonder. I don't remember. I wish I had those numbers.
Yeah, that's okay. But if you were where you were at, they were probably pretty high. But okay, so they were going down though.
They were. The shot works, and I only needed 1 round.
Wow. So if you didn't advocate for yourself,
I know.
you would have gone through a surgery, had your tube removed.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane.
Mm-hmm. I know.
Wow. I'm so glad that you asked if there were other treatment options.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of women will message me and ask if surgery is the only option or what treatment did you receive? And I continue to say, advocate for yourself. If you feel like something's wrong or you want to try something else,
Mm-hmm.
it's your body. So,
Yeah, I guess I could speak to those women and say, ectopic is really rare. It's 1 in 80. So take your chance if you would like to, like I did, and get the shot and
yeah.
see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
There's risk to it for sure. But at the same time, like I was 23, and maybe has to it could have something to do with my age. That my body was more willing, and had more energy to do something that, I was 23. Yeah. Trying to think of any other factors. I was not working, so maybe my stress was a little bit lower.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely factors to all of it, but I would say you're pretty lucky that it worked the first time, and I'm also lucky that it worked the first time for me.
Where did you get your shot?
I was asked to go to an infusion center.
Oh, I had it in my...
Oh, I'm sorry. You mean where physically?
Yeah.
My body? Oh, I had mine in my shoulders, but they asked me if I wanted them, I think in my butt, actually.
Yeah, that's where I got mine as well. So maybe if you would like to take the chance and get the shot, like those are some places like, I got it in my butt. So
yeah, I felt like because I'm used to getting vaccines in my arm that I'd much rather do it there just because it's more normal and natural. But you just never know.
They told me to. It wasn't like, oh, do you want it in your shoulder or your butt? They were just like, pull down your pants. And I was like, what? And they said, the shot has to go in your bum. And I was like, oh.
Did you have one injection or two?
One.
Okay. Because at the infusion center where I got it, they broke the injection in 2 bottles. So I technically got 2 shots, but it was 1 dose. And I think that's also really normal, but I don't know. It's different at different places. Because like you said, some will only do it in your butt. That sounds really weird to say. On your butt cheeks. I don't know. Or in your shoulders. I've heard the hips. Some people won't even ask for a preference. They'll just say, like you said, pull your pants down. I thought it was really strange that they had me go to an infusion center because, again, I had no idea.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, infusion centers are where, you can get cancer treatment, basically like IV sort of treatments.
I will say that you still get all of the hormones. Like during an ectopic, you are still just as hormonal. Your body thinks you are indeed pregnant. So everything was really heightened.
Yeah, very heightened. When you got methotrexate, were you still in contact with the guy?
Yeah, I was giving him updates.
Okay.
But he felt really bad. I just stopped calling him. I was just so over men at that point. I was just like, everyone stay away from me. But I still gave him updates. I was just like, this is a really tough time. I was isolating myself for sure.
Understandable.
Yeah. So after like I said, I was a power lifter. I had a powerlifting competition that summer, and I was not told to do it. I was told not to do it because, you wear a belt. Powerlifting, for those who don't know, it's not bodybuilding. Powerlifting is you lift something very, very heavy one time, and you have veins, and your CNS is being fried. It's like lifting a grand piano once, and you wear this big belt, and it puts a lot of pressure on your abdomen.
Mm-hmm.
So I got cleared the day of my competition. They were like, "You're 0."
Wow.
On my comp day. I was like, dude, this is cruel. Because I was training so hard for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said that I couldn't do it. And I still couldn't have. I was still training. I was still going to the gym. I just wasn't lifting as much as I could have, which is, again, insane. Don't recommend that. And then, so the day of my competition, like, I hit 0.
Wow.
And I went and watched the competition. It's torture.
Yeah, that's just another added layer to the entire situation.
Yeah. And you got yours at an infusion. So everyone is there for chemo. I got all of my treatment, all of my blood tests, all of the methotrexate there at the office. And the office is for pregnant people. So walking in past married pregnant couples every day. So it's just like those little things that kind of, make it more emotional for sure.
That in itself is traumatic.
Yeah. I'm 23 years old, not married, going in there for blood tests, walking past all these happy couples. And I'm sitting there in the waiting room by myself. Like, these are all just little things that makes it a very unique experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And now, for moving forward for the rest of your life, when you go to an OB appointment, you have to indicate that you've been pregnant before.
Mm-hmm.
Like an identity too. When you go to a doctor's office, they say, "Have you ever been pregnant before?" And you have to say yes. So it never leaves you. You never just move on.
It never leaves you. Never.
Mm-hmm.
The question that gets me often is not only at OB appointments, but now that I have my rainbow baby, when people say, "Oh, do you just have one child?" Short answer is yes, if I don't feel like getting into it. But there's also a really long answer there.
Yeah,
no, I just have
yes or no.
Yeah. So did communication with the guy end once you hit 0, or did
we met up one more time? And so he was back in Vegas on like the base there. And he was like, "Hey, I'd really like to see you." And I think he was, interested in me, but I think just the trauma of it all. And I also thought about this. I'm like, a marriage can totally change after an ectopic, because if I wanted to be in a committed relationship, I wanted to have my hand held so bad, but something in me was resenting him because he helped me put this situation in my lap, So I was not really keen on meeting with him, and I still did. And I was just kind of like, I was happy to see him. There was just a lot of emotions, where I was like, because we were talking, and it was just kind of like long distance. We were never really even boyfriend and girlfriend. We would have phone calls throughout the week before all of this. And we were interested, but it was very early stages of becoming anything. And I just wasn't in a position to be in a relationship. but it's like I also wanted it. It was very a lot of layers.
Yeah.
Because I just like I don't even understand it myself. So it's like I couldn't. If I wanted a relationship, I wanted someone to hold my hand. I was walking past married women with their bellies every single day, yet I still pushed him away.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't imagine other stories and other women that are married and the hardship that it puts on their marriage. Like, you're stuck with that person forever. You can't push that person away.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure that like people who are married go through a lot of these confusing times of like resenting their partner, because
Mm-hmm.
there's also a layer of resenting men because they just don't know. Like, they will never know what it's like to carry a child, and you kind of resent them for that.
Mm-hmm.
I did. I was just like, ugh, like no one knows, like, or no man knows. And
Yeah, they just don't experience it like the women do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I do think he was interested in still being something possibly after. And then I think something in me was admitting that I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so done right now. Like, I really just want to be left alone. Don't look at me. Don't touch me. Don't, after that, I was celibate for a really long time.
Understandable.
I went through a whole other relationship barely doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then after that, I had an ovarian cyst rupture and I had to almost lose my other tube.
Oh my gosh.
It was right after. If I didn't get the methotrexate, I would have lost my left ovary and then almost my right. I think about that every single day. I'm like, I wouldn't have had kids.
Yeah, that's crazy. Makes me more happy that you advocated for yourself to not have surgery.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage women to try to get the shot before, because you just never know what's going to happen in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to scare anyone and play the what if game, but that would have happened with me. I would have trusted the doctor and say, okay, take out my tube. And then I would have possibly lost my right tube as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like a mess of hormones. So then I became a health nut, because the only thing that can cause or like encourage ovarian cysts to irregularly grow is hormones, and hormones have to do with diet. And I was eating a lot of ramen at the time, so now I'm terrified of eating ramen.
Makes sense. It
can cause an ovarian cyst. Just irrational fears now.
Yeah, I mean, makes sense though. It's almost, I don't know, at least as a kid, I remember thinking when I'd get the flu, I would think to the last thing I ate, and I would never want to eat that thing again.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So to end this episode,
mm-hmm.
what's your advice for someone going through an ectopic that might not have a support system?
Follow this page, STA. And then I looked into it's a nonprofit therapy here that we have. They offer a virtual free like grieving platform that I was really blessed to have, and it was weekly, so I had weekly therapy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it was free, and it was just a support group. So I would definitely look into what your community has to offer and reach out to any nonprofits, because nonprofits have the biggest of hearts and they're our first defense for our community to get their needs met. And I'm a huge advocate for nonprofits. And right now, like, get on TikTok and find voices, get on Instagram and type in ectopic pregnancy and see what comes up, and you will find a bunch of people that are going through the same thing if you're too embarrassed to go to a support group.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome advice.
Yeah, that is what I would do, is just type in ectopic pregnancy on every platform, YouTube, Facebook and get into those groups. There's plenty of groups on Facebook that you can join. There's pages. There's a lot of influencers. There's an influencer that has, hundreds of thousands of followers, and she talks about her experience. So just surrounding yourself with what you need to hear and what you're experiencing, and don't isolate yourself.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on, Isabella. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I was very scared to do this.
Thank you for listening to the Ectopic Pregnancy Support Podcast. If you are looking for additional resources, head to ectopicpregnancysupport.com to learn more about my exclusive online support chat. Also, don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Facebook. See you next time.